Hello, everyone. This is Margaret Manning with 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. And as we get a little older, we may find ourselves living alone, our families may have moved away, and we might be dealing with some isolation and loneliness in our retirement. So our guest today is going to help give us some insights into how we can make friends in our 60s and, and value our own friendships. So my guest is Dr. Dale Atkins. Dr. Dale is a family psychologist. She is an author of many books and a TV expert. She's been on the Today Show and CNN and many other shows. Her expertise, though, is around family relationships. And I'd like to welcome you, Dr. Dale.
Thank you, Margaret. It's a pleasure to be here and to join your circle.
Thank you. It's welcome to our circle. That's a great way of saying it because we are 43,000 women now all around the world. And I think most of us deal with this issue of loneliness and isolation in one way or another. And, we don't have the same support systems as we did when we were younger. We're not raising our children. They're not in our home with us necessarily. So I guess the first question for you is, kind of what is your insight about how women can deal with isolation and loneliness? Not necessarily being alone, but the loneliness that may come from that in their 60s.
Yes, it's an important question. And I think that what we know is that when we are alone, we don't necessarily have to be lonely.
Yes.
And many people choose to be alone and they enjoy the solitude and they enjoy the company of themselves. When we're lonely, you can be lonely with people, but when we're lonely as we're aging, much of it has to do with a change of our routine. Perhaps we've moved from our home or the sounds of our home are no longer there. Perhaps we've retired from our work, or we've downsized, or friends of ours have moved away. Things that we were used to, our routine has changed. So we miss that which we were familiar with, and we have to begin to connect and rebuild a different kind of life. And so we might be longing for or in mourning for that which we had but no longer have. So I think the loneliness sometimes has to do with loss. It also could have to do with loss about who we were and who we thought we were and who other people perceived us to be. And it could have to do with our physical being. It could have to do with our status in the community. It could have to do with our job, our platform, whatever it is. So we feel often lonely because we don't have the structure that we used to have.
No, you said something really important there about routine. I think that is so significant. And I hadn't really ever thought about it in terms of that particular word, but it's true. Yes. It's that when you are working, you have a routine and you know what's expected of you and you know what you have to do to get rewards, to get recognition. And even in your family, you know the things that make people happy. Do cook a nice meal or arrange a vacation, but those things are not part of your life necessarily. So but then the other half of that a lot of women in the community talk about is that's fine, but how do I start new routines? How do I make new friendships? Everyone seems to be somewhere else.
Well, and you yourself are helping people do this with wonderful 60 and Me and the connections that people make. And in fact, the internet has helped a lot with organizations, programs like Meetup. But I seem to be a person who's really, I like to touch the flesh. And I think that what's very important is for people to continue to or begin to take care of themselves. Because what happens with loneliness is that people can start to get depressed. And when they don't have a social network, they will become more lonely and likely become more depressed and stay in more rather than go out. So connecting with one other person is a good way to begin. Now, what are the ways to do that? Whether or not you have a religious affiliation or a spiritual connection, you can start by going to a service somewhere or go to hear a lecture of someone who you find is going to come to your community. One has to get out, and that's something that is important. So you might join a gym. You might want to go to a yoga class. It doesn't really matter what you do. It's that you do something. The other thing that I think is very important is to discover what's really interesting to you. For so many women, they have really minimize their own interests and maximize the interests of everybody they've been with and for their life. So to really try and figure out, well, I think I'd like to paint, or I used to paint when I was 16, and then I'd stopped painting. Or I loved reading, and I'd like to find if there's a reading group, a book group. Or I really do love to travel, or I hiked and I'd like that maybe, or bike a lot. I'd like to join a biking group to connect through something you like to do. The important element is that you like to do it, because when you're doing something you love, it's not so much about meeting people. It's about enjoying yourself. When you enjoy yourself, you are going to have this unbelievable energy that is emitted from you that is going to be like a hook for other people.
It's like following your passions. I mean, in fact, I was reading this somewhere else, that when you're thinking about a job, if you want to go back into part-time work, go back, if you want, into a job where you have skills, if you're an accountant or whatever. But really go back to your childhood and say, what did I really love to do when I was a kid? And maybe build a business on that. So following your passions, that seems like a great piece. But also we were talking earlier about volunteering.
Yes.
And I think that's another thing people could do.
I was just going to go there.
Yeah.
You triggered something in my mind when you said when you were younger, what did you want to be or what did you want to do?
Yes.
And so many people kind of just put those aside. Some of us followed them, but some of us put them aside. What's so important is to volunteer, to really offer a skill that you have, or your ear, or your time in your community, in a larger organization. If you're looking to make friends and connections, I think it's important to do this within your community. And because you will meet people who are like you. I will share with you that when I moved to my new town 8 years ago, I had always wanted to do volunteering with my dog. He's a dog. We are a dog therapy team.
Okay.
And today, my closest friends in this town are the other women I met doing dog therapy. And I love doing it. They love doing it. And we found that we have much in common. Would I have met any of these women otherwise? Likely no. But it's something I wanted to do. There are organizations in every community that need help. Children need to be read to. Older people need to be sung to. Maybe you tinkled on the ivories and you'd like to relive your singing. You could join a choir, or you can accompany a choir. Whatever it is, when I ask people to think about this, of dealing with isolation, I ask them to really expand their minds. Throw out an idea and don't cut it down. Just put it out there and see what might happen to it. I think that family can be very helpful. And I think being connected online through Skype or through FaceTime is very important. I think staying connected with old friends is very important, who are meaningful to you, by old-fashioned letter writing, by email, also by FaceTime. And sharing memories, sharing photographs. It's very important to, if you have a family and the family's far away, and maybe they've got really busy lives, maybe your life is less busy. Instead of thinking they don't have time for me, ask them to send you a documentation through photographs or video of what they're doing. Yes. And then you'll be able to see kids grow up over time, and you won't be shocked, oh my goodness, he's 5 now or he's 10 now, because you will have been a part of it, even if you're not engaged every day. I also think it's important to mentor younger women and younger girls, and to find a way, either through a school program or a church or synagogue program, something, a girls club, a girls and boys club, to do something that engages you. And the other thing is, when you're looking to make friends and expand your friendship base, I often suggest to people that they don't only look for age mates. Look for people from different age brackets who are doing different things, engaged in different things. My book group, I will share with you, the oldest member of our book group is 92, and the youngest member of our book group is 38. And we are 12 women who meet every 6 weeks and talk about books. The perceptions and the experiences of all of us that we bring to the table is really quite remarkable. So try and meet people who are different from you, who come from a different background, who have a different life. And you can do that by stepping out of your comfort zone. When you do that, you really give yourself an opportunity to not be isolated and to learn about the world around you.
That's wonderful advice, and sometimes easier said than done, because once you get into a spiral of sadness and depression, it's really difficult. But I think that what you've described in terms of finding something that you love to do and then sharing it, it's actually interesting. We asked a question about where women would want to live in retirement, and yes. It was really surprising. A lot, I would say 80% said they wanted to live alone. And it was really interesting, because I do think that's the default for a lot of women. But another group, though, equally said, I wouldn't want to live in a retirement home with all the same age. Like you said, I want to be where the sound of children and the barking of dogs. And, it's just, I think there's just that vitality. So let's talk about girlfriends.
Okay. Before we talk about girlfriends, can we just say one thing about that?
Of course.
The reason we want to live alone is because we like taking care of people, but we really don't want to take care of them all the time. And we do want some quiet time, but we need to be with other people. So yes. I think if we all had our own rooms and there were lots of intergenerational living around us, kind of like the way our grandparents grew up, it would probably make sense, with young children, middle-aged people, older people, all looking after one another, but yet giving each other our space.
Maybe we're all going to come full circle. We're going to go back to the old communal days when that's how people lived. It seems like nice. That was a question I was going to ask you about, just why it seems like that isn't happening anymore, why there's that breakdown. And I don't know whether there's an answer to that, but we are where we are, I guess. So we have to live, with the situation. But girlfriends, you've said 12 in your group, and I'm in a place right now where I didn't know a lot of people, so I started a meetup. And you mentioned meetup.com, which is a place you can go and say, hey, women over 50 who want to go and visit museums, or women who want to just a different place to eat every week.
Yes,
and,
yes.
So tell me about the value of girlfriends, though, because I know to you, it's quite important.
It's very important. It's probably the most important thing for me.
Yes.
Because first of all, you're healthier when you're with your girlfriends, and you are stronger. Your immune system's better. And the research in girlfriends and in the value of women friendships is incredibly deep and incredibly real.
Mm-hmm.
The major study that was done at UCLA School of Medicine is termed the Tandem Befriend study. And basically what happened was, all this research before was done with men. And then what happened was, this research was done that showed that women really want to take care of the kids and be with their girlfriends. And best when they can do it together, because they get support and they get help and they laugh and they
hug.
And they can hug and they can do all of these very important primal things with one another. They can get support, they can be themselves. Now, this isn't to say that girlfriend relationships are not dicey sometimes. They are. But when we talk about trusting women and sharing what's in the depths of our heart, and being able to know that we will get an honest assessment, and being able to know that you can go to this girlfriend for that and this girlfriend for that, and that somehow you may not have a whole lot to talk about with the girlfriend that you still keep in your life from the time you were 5. But every time you see her, as you've gotten older, you have this wonderful connection, so that there are different purposes, if you will. We have different needs, and they are met by different women in our lives who have, for many of us, grown with us throughout our lives. Each of us has an arc of a life, and we have people who come in our lives at different times. And so, I mentioned this oxytocin that is the
yes.
hormone that is released.
Yes.
We are healthier, we are happier. It is not to say we don't get those feelings from other people in our lives, family members particularly. But with true girlfriends, we often feel that we can be our true selves, and we don't have to take care of them unless we really want to. Interestingly, most of us, and there's a lot of research in this as well, most of us find the importance of our friendship when one of our friends gets sick. And then we rally and we get all of these people to come deliver the food and do the visiting and take care of the kids.
The topic of girlfriends is really of interest to me as well. I mean, number one, because we have the community of 43,000 of us virtual girlfriends, which I think, adds some value. But I did interview Suzanne Brown-Levine. If you know her, she actually just wrote a book called Gotta Have Girlfriends, My Post-50 Posse or something. It was a great book. And she went through all the same research about, physically, how it's better for you, how you're, the oxytocin, what did you call it?
Oxytocin.
Oxytocin actually, it creates boosts your immune system, makes you healthier. But I do have a question, and it's a final question about the family, because I think a lot of women in their 60s have children in their 30s and late 20s, and making that transition between children who you nurtured and looked after, and they were kind of your stake in the ground, they were your definition, to a point where they want to be friends with you. And tell me, if you can, about how that, because that can cause a lot of isolation and loneliness when your children leave. That's a big goodbye. How do we deal with that loneliness, the loneliness of losing a child to their own lives? That's not too dramatic.
Well, it is the case for many people, and I think we need to address it. When you lose your child to their developing their own life, and they don't want you as part of their life, it can be a very dramatic cut. And so I think we mourn for it, but I'm not sure of the reasons that happens. Sometimes it happens because kids go out and they form their own lives. They don't want to have their parents involved. Could be they're so busy and they don't take the time. If you are, in fact, cut off from your adult child, that's a different story. And I think that then you work very, very hard to try and heal from within and create a life of meaningful friendships and perhaps extended family members.
Yes.
I do believe it is possible to make friends with your adult children if they are willing and you are willing. I think one of the problems that many women have is they become overly engaged and overly involved, and they forget that they are no longer, in most cases, the primary woman in their child's life, or the primary person, so that they may be very, very engaged with their daughter or their son, and the spouse of their child, their in-law child, may resent it. They may not, but they may. So there are some boundaries that may or may not have been addressed, and limits to what one can do and say in order to try to create a space to develop a friendship. The parent-child relationship is always there. They'll always be your little boy, they'll always be your little girl. You may not be able to say that, but in your mind's eye, that's true.
Yes.
But what is so incredible when it works is that you can savor who they have become and who they are becoming as adults. You can learn from them. You can, in some ways, be peers. Not in every way, not in every situation, but you can really develop a relationship of respect and of listening. And you don't always have to be the expert.
Yes.
You don't always have to have the answer. If that's your personality, it'll be hard to develop a friendship.
Yes.
It'll be hard to develop a friendship with anybody, because that's not what friendship's about. Friendship is about exchange. It's about listening. It's about being open. It's about going on the journey together. So I think being available to your adult children and wanting to know and admiring who they are becoming on their journey. You often have to squelch the critical part of yourself, forgiving them for hurting you in the past, if they can forgive you for hurting them. Forgiveness is a very big part about moving from the distinctive parent-child relationship into an adult parent-child relationship. Margaret, I wrote a book about this called I'm Okay, You're My Parents. And I wrote it as a way for adult children to be able to develop relationships with their parents before they were in the position of having to take care of them. What was interesting and surprising to me was that many of the people I heard from who really enjoyed the book were the parents of the adult children.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
It's, I didn't write it for that audience, but yet that was an audience. I often wondered if the adult child left it on the bedside
just for them to find it. It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that either way, this stage of our life as 60-year-old women is an unknown territory. Women have not historically lived this long. And so this is all new ground. And I think what you're saying here is, if you have a relationship with your child that is mature and respectful, that's a bonus. That really what you should be looking for in your 60s are friendships and relationships with people that are kind of in the same space. They're looking towards the future with the same lens. And
yes.
As you said, women particularly, but men too. I mean, I have a lot of male friends from,
yes.
From college I still keep in touch with, and they're lovely people, and they know me, and they know my, my history, and that's part of the fun of it too. People that know you and, understand you. So
I think it's very important. And I also want to say that we are looking ahead, but we can learn so much about aging from other people in other cultures. Mm-hmm. And to branch out, and I said it before, but I will emphasize it again, to meet people who come from different places, who've had different experiences, and also share their wisdom, because it's really remarkable what we can learn from people who have had a different life from our life. And, it can be very exciting. We are living longer. We are, as a group, we are hopefully living healthier. And, a lot depends on genes, but so much depends on the choices we make. And they're not just with what we eat and what we do. It's who we engage with and how we spend our time and what we read and what we watch and who we love and how we love. And it really is it's something very exciting, this aging thing. And I really commend you, and I appreciate what you're doing to try and open the dialogue so that we can all benefit.
Thank you. Well, I'm really glad that you're part of our community, and that your words are fantastic and they're so wise. And I know that you've been a great inspiration to everyone watching this. So, Dr. Dale, thank you again for your insights and your wisdom. You've been just so fantastic. I'm sure that you have inspired a lot of women in the community, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you again.